My name is Tracy McKay, and I'm 38 years old. While my spouse is away on business, I support ourselves by working odd jobs around the house. I am currently living alone because my 16-year-old kid attends a boarding high school in a different state. I wanted to go with my husband when his transfer was announced, but he didn't enjoy the thought of leaving our house empty and his family's home alone. My employment as a housekeeper primarily entails going to the houses of regular clients. The older clients prefer familiar faces, so it's difficult to take long breaks or quit. I forced myself to stay by myself, even though I really wanted to go with him. We met while I was an office worker at the company where he currently works, and that is where we got married. At work, he is a happy mood enhancer who is well liked by both genders. He made work excursions and drinking parties enjoyable by planning them ahead of time. I made an effort to support him by helping him with every situation. Tracy, sorry I'm late. I'll buy you dinner when I get to the end of this preparation. Really? That's great. I'll work hard on the rest. Think about what you want to eat while you work, okay? This was my first time going out to supper by myself with Scott. It was getting late, so maybe he invited me to dinner. We had never discussed personal matters before that day, but we spoke a lot while eating. We had a great talk because we had a lot in common, and I learned a lot about Scott that I didn't know before. We discovered we had a lot in common as a result, and after that day, we progressively began asking each other out to drinks. It was ideal for after work because we both enjoyed drinking, and we frequently went out on our own. Going out together was becoming second nature to us. I knew it was a date when we went to an amusement park the first time he invited me on a holiday. This came up in a discussion about enjoying thrill rides. I yelled, "Scott, this is definitely a date, isn't it?" as the roller coaster was about to gently approach its peak. Scott opened his mouth to say something when the roller coaster suddenly crashed. He came down and grinned broadly. I always think of it as a date. Scott grabbed my hand and gripped it firmly after saying that. It was unbelievable to me that I was dining, drinking, and strolling through the theme park while holding hands with the highly regarded Scott. That day, we thoroughly enjoyed the amusement park and a few of the rides. Scott and I grew closer after that day, but we never discussed starting a formal relationship. I figured we must be in a relationship because of how frequently we saw each other and what we did together, even though it was too obvious to inquire. Then one day a woman called the business phone while she was at work. She only said, "Please connect me to Scott." I asked anxiously, "Excuse me, may I have your name?" It was a standard question for business phone calls. "I'm Scott's wife." It took me a few moments to find words. I quickly said, "Please hold," and put her on hold after gathering my courage. "Scott, you have a call on line 3. I hurried to the bathroom after passing the message. He avoided talking about our relationships or other such topics for a purpose. Scott's marriage was unknown to me when he first started working for the company. I had thought he was unmarried. I couldn't focus on my work, so I left early that day. However, Scott McKay delivered a cake to my house that evening. Sorry about today. It must have been a shock, huh? I had no idea you were married. Of course, I was surprised. I'm sorry I didn't talk about it properly. You shouldn't be here. Go back home. Actually, we're already in the process of getting divorced, so I'm free now. And the call today was just about the divorce procedures. You don't need to make such excuses. It's not an excuse. I love you, Tracy. Once the divorce is finalized, I want to marry you as soon as possible. Then, until everything is official, let's not see each other anymore. If that's what you say, I understand. At that, Scott chuckled. My bewilderment remained after speaking with him. I had pointless questions like whether he had kids, what type of wife he had, and why they had divorced. What can I anticipate starting tomorrow? After being disturbed for a few days, I finally had to wait because I loved spending time with Scott. Then one day I entered an elevator during my lunch break. Scott also hurried in. We were the only two people on the elevator. The divorce is finalized. Sorry for making you wait, Tracy. Really? You actually got divorced? I told you I would. I thought in such situations, people just say that but never actually divorce. I've been worried all this time. It's all right now. If you're okay with a divorced guy like me, please go out with me. Yes. Although it took a while for us to begin dating formally, things moved very swiftly after that. Word got around the office that we were dating. After we were married, had a kid, and everything in my life went along nicely, almost shockingly so. I left my job when we decided to be married. I'd heard that Scott's lack of children with his ex-wife may have contributed to their divorce, but I never followed up to find out more. I became a mommy after giving birth to our first baby and enjoying a new life after getting married. I had 2 people to pour my love into from that day on. After years of devoted time to raising our son, I started working part-time for a housekeeping business. Scott loved me and our son. I decided it would be best to gradually acclimatize to the workforce rather than scrambling to obtain a job because my son was scheduled to attend a boarding high school for sports when he began junior high school. Then, Scott's transfer was chosen when our son was enrolled in high school. Suddenly feeling lonely, I threw myself into my duties, cooking, cleaning, and doing the elderly people's laundry. For me, living alone turned into a rewarding career. I felt like I was with my own family as I visited nearly the same houses every day. After several months of this kind of existence, I had become used to living alone. While having breakfast on this rare day off, I considered doing a complete cleaning of my house. Looking at the TV when it started to make noise, the place was where Scott's company had been after his transfer. There was constant coverage of a tsunami in the news. In the video, a huge wave struck Scott's company immediately. When I came to, I quickly picked up my phone and dialed Scott. Yes, Scott? Where are you? At the office, where else? Don't call during work. The call ended abruptly. All I could do was feel uneasy. Was it just that he wasn't at the office while I was speaking with him on the phone? Is he not aware of the news? Nothing suggested that he was aware of the tsunami. Still, that was an odd tone for him to speak in. I made the decision to give Scott McKay's employer's corporate office a call because I was feeling concerned. Miss McKay, we always appreciate your support. Unfortunately, Mr. McKay is off today. Of course, sorry about that. Is Victor available then? Please hold on a moment. This Victor was a colleague who started working for the company the same year as me. My name is Tracy McKay. Could I speak to my husband, please? That was the day I was supposed to meet him. From the conversation with the office worker, I thought I knew what might be happening, but I needed proof. Hi, Victor. Long time no see. Sorry for calling you out of the blue. What's up? You haven't changed at all, Tracy. Look at me, already hitting middle-age spread. I wanted to ask you something. Where is Scott working now? Huh? Scott has been working with us continuously. Why do you ask? I knew it. What's wrong? Did you two have a fight? It must be another woman, just like when he was with me. But surely he wouldn't lie about something like that. Probably thought that if he was transferred, he could be with her every day. Let me look into it. Act like you don't know anything. Tracy, this morning I saw the news about the tsunami and called him in a panic. He said he was at work. It seemed strange if he was supposed to be at his transfer location. I see. I'll let you know as soon as I find out anything. Thank you, Victor. While waiting for Victor to call, I was thinking about numerous matters. Divorced on my own at this age. I was powerless. But I couldn't stay with Scott if he was indeed cheating. 3 days later, Victor got in touch with me. When Victor and I met that day, everything made sense. To throw Scott off guard, Victor had feigned to ask for help over a rumor of his own affair. Rather than that, he returned with details on Scott. Scott shared a home with a youthful lady. She also brought him homemade sandwiches every day, it seems. He had lied to me about being moved, and I couldn't forgive him for it. I went to make dinner at the house I was in charge of with my housekeeping service while I considered what to do with my emotions. Grandpa Dan, the homeowner, was a kind yet intelligent man who lived alone without family. "Grandpa Dan, I'll make mixed rice and simmered fish for dinner today." "Thank you, Tracy." "But is something wrong?" "No, I'm fine. Nothing is wrong. You don't have to make anything fancy. Just talk to me." "Well, I'm thinking about getting a divorce." "You must be going through something tough." "Yes. I told you my husband was transferred, but it seems that was all a lie. He's been going to the company as usual, but he's living with a young girl. Your husband has really done something flashy. He still doesn't realize that I know the truth. But honestly, I can't decide what to do." "What's the first thing that comes to your mind?" "Of course, I don't want to be with him anymore." Grandpa Dan was trying to calm my anguish and fury by speaking in a kinder, more compassionate tone than normal. "Then you should clear out his belongings from the house." "But if I do that, my son and I won't be able to live. You know, Tracy, since you started coming here, my days have become truly enjoyable. Now it's my turn to repay the favor." "What do you mean?" "I used to be a president of a big company when I was healthier." "I've never heard you mention that before." "Indeed, his house is huge, and I had initially thought him to be a well-off elderly man. But as we became closer, such things stopped mattering. Once those titles are gone, people who used to be around me disappeared. Now I'm all alone. My wife passed away before me, and we never had children. It's lonely, I tell you. I'd like to say get a divorce and become my wife." "What? Just a name?" "Of course. If you were my wife, I could leave all my wealth to you." "You, what?" That's such a bizarre idea. I was truly taken aback by Grandpa Dan's comment. I felt like I had gained a strong ally and felt stronger even though I wasn't sure at the time if it was a prank or not. I wasn't sure what Grandpa Dan was talking about at first. That would be too much, even tarnishing your family register. "But first, let's get you a house. We'll start the discussion from there. Move all your and your son's belongings there." I even considered the possibility that, at his age, he was experiencing dementia. But soon after, Grandpa Dan gave my son and me a brand new home. He expressed his desire to build the business around my efforts to spend more time with the elderly in their dying days. He suggested that I form a corporation and that I serve as its representative, saying, "You build and run it from now on. I will lay the foundation for the company." In light of my circumstances and my son, I chose to embrace Grandpa Dan's kindness. There was hesitation no more. I made the decision to move on and let go of my affections for my spouse. I went to see my son on my next day off. I wanted to make sure he grasped the current situation and to go over everything with him. I had always considered him to be a youngster, but he had developed into a fine adult. He gave me his undivided attention and urged me to persevere. He said he wanted to thank Grandpa Dan and that he would pay him a visit during his long breaks. Only Scott's possessions remained in the old house after I finished the transfer alone. When our belongings were gone, the house was just a big, empty room. I turned to leave the wedding band and divorce papers at the door. Not surprisingly, during all of this, Scott had not gotten in touch with me. Even though I was still going to Grandpa Dan's place, I kept working at my prior employment. I talked to Grandpa Dan before I started the business about becoming a licensed care worker with the goal of launching an elderly-specific service. Grandpa Dan was thrilled with my proposal and encouraged me to obtain the certificate as quickly as possible. He also offered to pay for my living expenses and educational costs. There was no use in holding back now. I gladly embraced Grandpa Dan's assistance. Scott called me for the first time about 6 months later. I didn't call back even after class ended because I was in class and couldn't answer. My intention was to let Scott see for himself what was going on at home. Despite quitting my work, I took care of Grandpa Dan while attending school every day without missing a day. Whenever we could, we shared dinner together, and I stayed with him until he went to sleep. We resembled a family. Tracy, if your divorce were to be finalized, would you be open to becoming my adopted child? You're stating things like this again. I'm nearing the end of my life. You're too young to be my wife. However, even if I bought you a house and started a business, there's still plenty of wealth left. This house would sell for a good amount too. I hate to bother you, but I want you to take care of this. Thank you, Grandpa Dan, but my divorce isn't finalized yet, and I need you to remain healthy and with us, right? Please give it some serious thought. I want Tracy, someone like you who works hard to stay close to the elderly and doesn't ask for anything in return, to use the money I leave behind. Okay, I get it. Let's relax for the day. Grandpa Dan seemed rushed, so maybe he wasn't feeling well. I considered driving him to the hospital. The following morning, I had multiple calls from Scott. The phone kept ringing, so I answered after about the 10th time. You're back at last. Welcome back. Scott, you don't really need 2 residences, as you can see. How come? You believed that I was unaware that you were living with a young girl and weren't actually transferred? Oh wait, simply draft and file the divorce decree right away. I don't need your help. We can end this quickly if you just go out. You're quite laid back. Have you met another man? I'll break up with her. Please, no need to break up. I realized how unreliable and worthless you are, so I'm working hard to raise our child by myself. I don't have time for unnecessary thoughts. I just want you to disappear. I was wrong. Forgive me for the divorce. Just come back and let's talk. I will never come back. Happiness to you both, I hope. All right, good. Today, I'm going to file the divorce papers. Do it, please, and at the very least, offer a sincere apology. Oh, Tracy, I apologize for hurting your feelings. I apologize, just like I did all those years ago when I learned that you were married. Go take care of the procedure, son. After that, I hurriedly got ready to start the company, gathering personnel, organizing spaces, and obtaining licenses. The reason I hurried was that I had to take Grandpa Dan to the hospital right away, but the doctor informed me that he would not be able to survive for long. Grandpa Dan collapsed and was taken to the hospital, so I hurried to do what I could as soon as possible. Grandpa Dan, I came to visit you. Tracy, you don't need to come to such a place when you're busy. Grandpa Dan wanted to see the company I created. Even before the company started operating, we received many reservations and inquiries from users. I'm allowed to go out today. Let's go for a brief stroll. Grandpa Dan said, that sounds good after such a long time. I drove Grandpa Dan to the company and showed him the office design we came up with jointly, the staff clothes, the cars, everything. We also took a staff portrait in front of the office. Excuse me, who is this gentleman? I apologize for coming in so abruptly. That night, Grandpa Dan softly passed away in his hospital bed. I'm Tracy's father, he said. Grandpa Dan winked at me, but that was the last time I saw him smile. Maybe he was waiting to see the company completed. Grandpa Dan, it's my turn to repay you now. I promised him at that very moment, feeling more radiant than I had ever felt in my life. As a way of repaying Grandpa Dan, I've decided to carry on with this work, staying close to the elderly for their final moments of joy, just as he told me.